Chapter 13. The Great Cermon Competition. London. About a couple of weeks after that spectacular finish of young Bingo, which I've just been telling you about, was empty and smelled of burning asphalt. All my pals were away, most of the theatres were shut. It was most infernally hot. Jeeves came in with the drinks on a tray. "Jeeves," I said, "it's beastly hot." "The weather is oppressive, sir." "I think we need to change, Jeeves." "Just as you say, sir. There is a letter on the tray." I opened the letter. "Jeeves, do you know Twing Hall?" "Yes, sir." "Well, Mr. Little is there." "Indeed, sir." "Absolutely. He's again a tutor." After that mix-up at Goodwood, when young Bingo Little disappeared, I had been looking for him everywhere, asking mutual friends if they had heard anything of him, but nobody had. And all the time he had been at Twing Hall. Strange. And I'll tell you why it was strange. Twing Hall belongs to old Lord Hammersley, a great pal of my father when he was alive. I generally spent there a week or two, sometime in the summer, and I was thinking of going there before I read the letter. And what's more, Jeeves, my cousin Claude and my cousin Eustace, you remember them? Very vividly, sir. Well, they're down there too, preparing for some exam with the vicar. I used to read with him myself at one time. I read the letter again. It was from Eustace. Claude and Eustace are twins and are the curse of the human race. The vicarage, Twing, Gloss. Dear Bertie, do you want to make a bit of money? I hear you had bad luck at Goodwood, so you probably do. Well, come down here quick and get in on the biggest sporting event of the season. I'll explain when I see you, but you can take it from me, it's all right. Claude and I are studying at old Heppenstall's. There are 9 of us, not counting your pal Bingo Little, who is tutoring the kid up the hall. Don't miss this golden opportunity, which may never occur again. Come and join us. Yours, Eustace. I handed this to Jeeves. He studied it thoughtfully. What do you think of it? Strange letter, eh? I can imagine, sir. These young gentlemen, Mr. Claude and Mr. Eustace, are preparing for some game. Yes, but what game? How do you think? It is impossible to say, sir. Did you observe that the letter continues over the page? What? I grabbed the letter. This was what was on the other side of the last page. Cermon. Runners and betting. Probable starters. Reverend Joseph Tucker. Scratch. Reverend Leonard Starkey. Scratch. Reverend Alexander Jones. Receives 3 minutes. Reverend W. Dix. Receives 5 minutes. Reverend Francis Happenstall receives 8 minutes. Reverend Cuthbert Deeble receives 9 minutes. Reverend Orlo Howe receives 9 minutes. Reverend J.J. Roberts receives 10 minutes. Reverend J. Hayward receives 12 minutes. Reverend James Bates receives 15 minutes. The above have arrived. Prices 5 to 2. Tucker, Starkey 3 to 1. Jones 9 to 2, Dix 6 to 1, Happenstall, Deeble, Howe in 100 to 8 in any other. It surprised me. Do you understand it, Jeeves? No, sir. Well, I think we ought to have a look into it, anyway. What? Undoubtedly, sir. Send a telegram to Lord Hammersley to say we are coming, and buy 2 tickets on the 5:10 at Paddington tomorrow. The 5:10 was late as usual, and everybody was dressing for dinner when I arrived at the hall. I slid into the vacant chair and found that I was sitting next to old Hammersley's younger daughter, Cynthia. "Oh, hello," I said. "Great pals we've always been. In fact, there was a time when I had an idea I was in love with Cynthia. However, now it went away. A pretty and lively and attractive girl, mind you, but full of ideas and all that. I may be wrong, but I have an idea that she's the sort of girl who would want a fellow to make a career. I know I've heard her speak favorably of Napoleon." "Well, Bertie, so you have arrived?" "Yes, I have arrived. And yes, here I am. I say, who are all these cows?" "Oh, just people from round about. You know most of them. You remember Colonel Willis and the Spencers?" "Of course, yes. And there's old Happenstall. Who's the other clergyman next to Mrs. Spencer?" Mr. Hayward from Lower Bingley." "How many clergymen?" "Oh, there's another next to Mrs. Willis. That's Mr. Bates, Mr. Happenstall's nephew. He's down here during the summer holidays. I thought I knew his face. I saw him at Oxford." I took another look round the table and noticed young Bingo. Ah, there he is. I said, that's the old man. There's who? Young Bingo Little, great pal of mine. He's tutoring your brother, you know. Good gracious, is he a friend of yours? Exactly. Known him all my life. Well then tell me, Bertie, is he weak in the head? Weak in the head? Of course, he's a friend of yours, but he's strange in his manner. What do you mean? Well, he looks at me so oddly. Oddly? Well, give me an imitation. I can't in front of all the people. Yes, you can. I hold my napkin up. All right, then, quick, there. Considering that she had only about a second and a half to do it in, I must say it was a fine exhibition. She opened her mouth and eyes pretty wide and managed to look so like a dyspeptic and cough that I recognized the symptoms immediately. Oh, that's all right. No need to worry. He's simply in love with you. In love with me? Don't be absurd. My dear, you don't know anything about Bingo. He can fall in love with anybody. Oh, thank you. Well, I didn't mean in that way, you know. He's in love with you, no wonder. Why, I was in love with you myself once. Once? Oh, this isn't one of your tactful evenings, Bertie. Well, my dear, dash it, considering that you nearly laughed yourself into a permanent state of hiccups when I asked you. No, I'm not reproaching you. No doubt there were faults on the both sides, but he's very good-looking, isn't he? Good-looking? Bingo, good-looking? I don't know, really. I mean, compared with some people, said Cynthia. Some time after this, Lady Wickhammersley gave the signal for the girl to go away, and they stood up, and I didn't get the chance of talking to young Bingo, and later in the drawing-room he didn't show up. I found him in his room, lying on the bed with his feet on the rail, smoking a pipe. There was a notebook beside him. Hello, Bertie. Hello, Bertie. Hello, Bingo. He said in a distressed sort of manner. It's rather strange to find you down here. Your uncle cut off your allowance after that Goodwood event, and you had to take this tutoring job, right? Correct, said young Bingo. Well, you might have let your pals know where you were. He frowned darkly. I didn't want them to know where I was. I wanted to creep away and hide myself. I've been through a bad time, Bertie, these last weeks. The sun ceased to shine. That's curious. We had gorgeous weather in London. The birds ceased to sing. What birds? The devil knows what birds, cried young Bingo. Any birds. The birds round about here. I can't specify them by their pet names. I tell you, Bertie, it hit me hard, very hard. What hit you? I simply couldn't follow the blighter. Charlotte, her callousness. Oh. I've seen poor old Bingo through so many unsuccessful love affairs that I'd almost forgotten there was a girl. Of course, Charlotte Corday Robotham. And she had gone off with Comrade Butt. I went through torments. Tell me, Bertie, what are you doing down there? I didn't know you knew these people. Me? Why, I've known them since I was a kid. Young Bingo put his feet down with a thought. Do you mean to say you've known Lady Cynthia all the time? Of course. She was 7 when I met her first. Good Lord. He looked at me. I love that girl, Bertie. Yes, nice girl, of course. Don't speak of her in that horrible casual way. She's an angel. An angel. Was she talking about me at all at the dinner, Bertie? Oh, yes, yes. What did she say? I remember one thing. She said she thought you were good-looking. Young Bingo closed his eyes in a sort of ecstasy. Then he picked up the notebook. Will you walk a little, old man? He said in a faraway voice. I've got to write something. To write? Poetry, if you want to know. I wish. Said young Bingo, not without some bitterness. She had been christened something except Cynthia. There isn't a word in the language it rhymes with. Why Cynthia? Why not Jane? Next morning, as I lay in bed wondering when Jeeves was going to show up with a cup of tea, the voice of young Bingo polluted the air. The blighter had apparently reasoned with the lock. Leave me, I said. I want to be alone. I can't see anybody till I've had my tea. When Cynthia smiles, said young Bingo, the skies are blue. Birds in the garden trill and sing, and joy is king of everything when Cynthia smiles. He coughed. When Cynthia frowns, what the devil are you talking about? I'm reading you my poem, the one I wrote to Cynthia last night. I'll go on, shall I? No. No? No, I haven't had my tea. At this moment Jeeves came in with the tea, and I was glad. After a couple of sips, things looked a bit brighter. Even young Bingo didn't look so loathsome as before. By the time I'd finished the first cup, I was a new man. Suddenly the door opened and in blew Claude and Eustace. One of the things which discouraged me about rural life in the earliness with which events begin to happen. At Twink, thank heaven, they know me and let me breakfast in bed. The twins seemed pleased to see me. Good old Bertie, said Claude. Dear friend, said Eustace, the Reverend told us you had arrived. I thought that letter of mine would get you there. You can always rely on Bertie, said Claude, a real sportsman. Well, has Bingo told you about it? Not a word. We've been talking, said Bingo hastily, of other matters. Claude pinched the last slice of thin bread and butter, and Eustace drank out of a cup of tea. It's like this, Bertie, said Eustace, settling down. This desert spot, reading with old Happenstall. Well, of course nothing is jollier than reading the classics when it's 100 in the shade, but there comes a time when you begin to feel the need of a little relaxation, and there are absolutely no facilities for relaxation in this place whatever. And then Steggles got this idea. Steggles is one of our reading party, and between ourselves rather a fool as a general thing. Still, you have to give him credit for getting this idea. What idea? Well, you know how many parsons there are round about here. There are about a dozen villages within a radius of 6 miles, and each village has a church, and each church has a parson, and each parson preaches a sermon every Sunday. Tomorrow week, Sunday at the 23rd, we are running off the great sermon competition. Steggles is making the book. The parson that preaches the longest sermon wins. Did you study the race card I sent you? I couldn't understand what it was all about. Well, you chump, it gives the names and the current odds on each starter. I've got another copy, in case you have lost yours. Take a careful look at it, Jeeves. Old man, do you want to get some money? Sir, said Jeeves, who had just brought my breakfast. Claude explained the scheme. Amazingly, Jeeves grasped it immediately, but he merely smiled in a paternal sort of way. Thank you, sir. I think not. Well, you're with us, Bertie, aren't you? Claude, stealing a roll and slice of bacon, said. Have you studied that card? Well, tell me, is everything clear? Of course it was. Well, Happenstall is a winner, I said. There isn't a parson in the land who could give him 8 minutes. Your pal Steggles must be an ass. In the days when I was with him, old Happenstall never used to preach under half an hour. Has he lost his whim lately? Not a bit of it. Tell him what happened, Claude. Oh, said Claude, the first Sunday we were here, we all went to Twink Church, and old Happenstall preached a sermon that was under 20 minutes. This what happened. Steggles didn't notice it, and the Reverend didn't notice it himself, but Eustace and I both noticed that he had dropped some pages out of his sermon case as he was walking up to the pulpit. But Steggles went away with the impression that 20 minutes was his usual form. The next Sunday we heard Tucker and Starkey, and they both went well over the 35 minutes. So Steggles wrote the figures that you see on the card. You must come into this, Bertie. You see, the trouble is that I have nothing, and Eustace has nothing, and Bingo Little has nothing, so you have to finance the syndicate. We have a lot of money in all our pockets, so we have to get back now. Think the thing is over, and phone me later in the day. Come on, Claude, man. The more I studied the scheme, the better it looked. How about it, Jeeves? I said. Jeeves smiled gently and went out. Jeeves has no sporting blood, sang Bingo. Well, I have. I'm coming into this. Claude's quite right. It's like finding money by the wayside. Good man, said Bingo. Now, I can see daylight. Say I have a tenner on a Happenstall and cop. And then I'll go to my uncle. He's a snob, you know, and when he hears that I'm going to marry the daughter of an earl, I say, old man, aren't you looking ahead rather far? Oh, that's all right. She practically told me yesterday she was fond of me. What? Well, she said that sort of a man she liked was the self-reliant, manly man with strength, good looks, character, ambition, and initiative. Leave me, I said. Leave me to my breakfast. I went to the phone and instructed Eustace to put a tenner on the Twink flyer at current odds for each of the syndicate. And after lunch, Eustace rang me up to say that he had done business 7-1, owing to a rumor that the Reverend was subject to hay fever. And it was lucky. I thought the next day that we had managed to get the money on in time. For on the Sunday morning old Happenstall gave us 36 solid minutes on certain popular superstitions. I was sitting next to Steggles. He was a little red-faced fella with shifty eyes and a suspicious nature. And he was pale. On Tuesday afternoon, when as I was strolling up and down in front of the house with a cigarette, Claude and Eustace came up the drive on bicycles with the momentous news. "Bertie," said Claude, deeply agitated, "unless we take immediate action and do something, we're ruined." "What's the matter?" "J. Hayward," said Eustace morosely. "The Lower Bingley started. We never ever considered him," said Claude. "Somehow or other he got overlooked. It's always like this. Steggles overlooked him. We all overlooked him. But Eustace and I were riding through Lower Bingley this morning, and there was a wedding on at the church, and J. Hayward delivered a speech of 26 minutes by Claude's watch. At a village wedding, mark you. What will it do when he really extends himself?" "There's only one thing to be done, Bertie," said Claude. "You must give us some more money so that we can put on Hayward and save ourselves." "But, well, it's the only way out." "But I say, I hate the idea to throw money away. What else can you suggest? You don't suppose the Reverend can give us 4 minutes more and win, do you?" "I know what to do," I said. "What?" "I see a way by which we can make it safe for our nominee. I'll meet him this afternoon and ask him to preach the sermon of his on brotherly love on Sunday." Claude and Eustace looked at each other. "It's a scheme." "An excellent scheme," said Eustace. "Bravo, Bertie. Then carry on." Old Happenstall seemed pleased and touched that I should have remembered the sermon all these years, and said he had once or twice had an idea of preaching it again, only it had seemed to him that it was perhaps very long. "Long?" I said. "Oh my goodness, you don't call that brotherly love sermon of yours long, do you? It takes fully 50 minutes to deliver." "Really?" "Yes. Are you sure that it is not necessary to make certain excisions and elimination? I might, for example, delete the rather exhaustive excursus into the family life of the early Assyrians." "Don't touch a word of it, or you will spoil the whole thing," I said earnestly. "I am delighted to hear you say so, and I shall preach the whole sermon next Sunday morning. But you can never tell what's going to happen. I'd hardly finished my breakfast on the Saturday morning when Jeeves came to my bedside to say that Eustace wanted me on the telephone." "Good Lord, Jeeves, what's the matter?" "Mr. Eustace did not confide in me, sir." "Do you know what I think, Jeeves? Something's gone wrong with the favourite." "Which is the favourite, sir?" "Mr. Happenstall. He was intending to preach a sermon on brotherly love. I wonder if anything has happened to him." "Sir, Mr. Eustace is on the telephone." I put on a dressing gown. I flew downstairs like a mighty rushing wind. The moment I heard Eustace's voice, I knew we were ruined. "Bertie, here I am. Bertie, we're dead. The favourite's blown up." "No." "Yes. Coughing in his stable all last night." "What?" "Absolutely. Hay fever." "Oh my lord. The doctor is with him now, and it's only a question of minutes before he's officially out of the race. That means the curate will show up at the post instead, and he's no good at all. 100 to 6, but nobody wants. What shall we do? Eustace, hello. What can you get on J. Hayward?" "Only 4 to 1 now. I think Steggles has heard something." "Well, 4 to 1 will clear us. Put another fiver all round on J. Hayward for the syndicate. If he wins." "What do you mean? I thought you consider him a winner after Happenstall." "I'm beginning to wonder," said Eustace gloomily, "if there's a such thing as a winner in this world. I am told that the Reverend Joseph Tucker did an extraordinarily fine trial gallop at a meeting over a bad gwig yesterday. However, it seems our only chance. So long." I had my choice of churches next morning, and naturally I didn't hesitate. I chose Lower Bingley, that was 10 miles away, but I borrowed a bicycle and ran off. Eustace had been right. The man was a tall grey beard, and he went off from the start with a nice easy action, pausing and clearing his throat at the end of each sentence. And it wasn't 5 minutes before I realized that here was the winner. His habit of stopping and looking round the church at intervals was worth minutes to us. At the 20-minute mark he had merely settled down, and when he finally finished with a good burst, the clock showed 35 minutes 14 seconds. I hopped on to the old bike and started back to the hall for lunch. Bingo was talking on the phone when I arrived. Fine, splendid, he was saying. Oh, we needn't to worry about him. I'll tell Bertie. He hung up the receiver and caught sight of me. Oh, hello, Bertie. I was just talking to Eustace. It's all right, old man. The report from Lower Bingley has just got in. J. Howard won. I knew he would. I just come from there. Oh, were you there? I went to Bagwick. Tucker ran a splendid race. But what could he do? Starkey had a sore throat and was nowhere. Roberts of Fale by the Water ran third. Good old J. Howard, said Bingo affectionately, and we strolled out onto the terrace. Are the results clear then? I asked. All except Gandil by the Hill. But we needn't to worry about Bates. He never had a chance. By the way, poor old Jeeves loses his tenner. Silly ass. Jeeves? What do you mean? He came to me this morning just after you had left and asked me to put a tenner on Bates for him. I told him he was a chump and begged him not to throw his money away, but he would do that. I beg your pardon, sir. The note arrived for you just after you had left the house this morning. Jeeves had materialized from nowhere and was standing at my elbow. What? Note? The Reverend Mr. Happenstall Butler brought it over from the vicarage, sir. It came too late to be delivered to you at the moment. Young Bingo was talking to Jeeves. The yell I gave made him bite his tongue in the middle of a sentence. What is the matter? He asked. We're ruined. Listen to this. I read him the note. The vicarage, Twing, Gloss. My dear Worcester, as you may have heard, the circumstances over which I have no control will prevent my preaching the sermon on brotherly love for which you made such a flattering request. I am unwilling, however, that you shall be disappointed. So if you will attend divine service at Gandil by the Hill this morning, you will hear my sermon preached by young Bates, my nephew. I have lent him the manuscript at his urgent desire. My nephew is one of the candidates for the headmastership of a well-known public school, and the choice is between him and one rival. Late yesterday evening, James received private information that the head of the board of governors of the school proposed to sit under him this Sunday, in order to judge of the merits of his preaching, a most important item in swaying the board's choice. I acceded to his plea that I lend him my sermon on brotherly love, of which, like you, he apparently retains a vivid recollection. I just wish to help the boy. I remain cordially yours, F. Happenstall. P.S. Because of the hay fever, I am dictating this letter to my butler Brookfield, who will convey it to you. I don't know when I have experienced a more massive silence than the one that followed my reading of this epistle. Young Bingo gulped once or twice. Jeeves coughed one soft, low, gentle cough, and then stood gazing serenely at the landscape. Finally, young Bingo spoke. Great Lord, he whispered hoarsely. So he had inside information, dash it. Oh, yes, sir, said Jeeves. Brookfield mentioned the contents of the notes to me when he brought it. We are old friends. Well, all I can say, Bingo cried, is that it's unfair, preaching another man's sermon. Do you call that honest? Do you call that playing the game? Well, my dear old man, I said, be fair. It's quite within the rules. Clergymen do it all the time. They aren't expected always to make up the sermons they preach. Jeeves coughed again and fixed me with an expressionless eye. And in the present case, sir, if I may be permitted to take the liberty of making the observation, we should remember that the securing of this headmastership meant everything to the young couple. Young couple? What young couple? The Reverend James Bates, sir, and Lady Cynthia. I am informed by her ladyship maid that they have been engaged to be married for some weeks, and his lordship made his consent conditional on Mr. Bates securing a really important and remunerative position. Young Bingo turned a little light green. Engaged to be married? Yes, sir. There was a silence. I think I'll go for a walk, said Bingo. But my dear old man, it's just lunchtime. I don't want any lunch, said Bingo.